Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to another edition of Breaking News. Today is Thursday, December 21st, 2023. And as always, we look at the top stories with what's going on in the world with respect to last day's Bible prophecy and how they amazingly fit. And each day we see these stories coming about that just fit precisely in what the Bible says the world will be like at the time of the end. And the time of the end, of course, is the end of this age before the coming of Jesus Christ to the earth and the setting up of God's kingdom. So we do this every single day. And just a reminder, please remind others every day before 7 a.m. Pacific time, we will launch the breaking news of the day. I do it every day, and we get it done and we get it out before 7 a.m., usually before, sometimes even before 6 a.m. here. And so please take advantage of it and let others know that you might not get a reminder from YouTube. Many people have told me they have not, and they forget that we do it every day. So we do it every day. So it's therefore you can, and again, if you miss one, we have the files there. Now, the files aren't on YouTube. I only like 4 or 5 days. I only keep them on there, the different videos, but on our website and on our app, we certainly have them there. We have the archived ones, so you can go back and watch for, whenever you want to start with what's been going on. But particularly the last several days, you always want to keep up because so many things happen. All right. Interestingly, one of the periodicals, the Jerusalem Post, had this headline here, and I thought it'd be a good thing to start with. It said Middle East in capital letters. The region known as the Middle East has been conquered and reconquered by every superpower in the West. This has created a region rich in culture of resistance and thousands of ethnic groups looking for their piece of land. This has created a complicated region. And then they say, we go on to explain where the complications lie. Now, we have done this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end. It's a free download, as is all of our books from our website, Educating Our World, under the subject of Bible prophecy. And it's sign number 3, and that's about Israel coming back to its ancient homeland, the prediction and the fulfillment in the last days. That will at least help you understand sort of the history of what's happened recently, starting, in the basically the 19th century with Mark Twain's book, The Innocents Abroad in 1867, and then Theodor Herzl, basically wanting a Jewish state in Basel, Switzerland. It's 1897, having a meeting there, and then leading up to what happened, World War I, World War II, and then the creation of the modern Jewish state, not the creation of the nation Israel. Let's not make that mistake. Israel has always been a nation. They've been a nation in exile, but they're a modern state, and that's the distinction we need to make. The Middle East. Why is it called the Middle East? I never knew until one of our guides in Israel and one of my 18 trips I've done there, Ronnie Simone, said it's called the Middle East. It was named that by the Brits because the Brits thought they were the center of the universe. And from Britain being the center, Israel's in the Middle East. It's not the Far East, it's the Middle East. And that's where the name came from. I never knew that. All right, well, let's look at the stories about this complicated region because it's getting more and more complicated by the day. Update number 1, Hamas kills the bid to revive ceasefire deal and the hostage release. The leader of Hamas, one of the top 3, one of the 3 billionaire leaders, Sinwar, showed up in Egypt under a lot of fanfare talking about some type of ceasefire. And he said, basically, he put the kibosh on it. He said there will be no ceasefire, no stop, no releasing of hostages until there's a ceasefire, until the war's over. In other words, when Israel leaves Gaza, then we'll talk about it. Well, obviously that's not a starting point. So all that fanfare was for nothing. So he kills the bid to revive this hostage deal. Supposedly, Israel was offering a 1 week of ceasefire in exchange for 40 hostages. That has not come through. So we're back to square one on the hostage situation, and it's terrible. So please, again, pray for those families, pray for the people of Israel, pray that the gospel of Jesus Christ will get to them, which there's many people that are preaching to all of the inhabitants there at this time that there is a hope for them. The answer is in Jesus Christ. That's what we do here on Breaking News. He's the answer. We talk about the last days Bible prophecy as a means to an end, but the real story is the first coming of Christ, which we're going to celebrate in 4 days here, the birth of Jesus Christ. That's why on our website we have 11 different topics: the Bible, God, Jesus Christ, the Holy Spirit, the afterlife, the Bible and science. Um, we also talk about the unseen world, angels, demons, Satan, because we need to know about all of that, the entire Bible. Bible prophecy is just a small percentage. So when we talk about this, it's a means to an end. And like we've said before, we hope you're studying these other subjects because that's what it's all about, to get an understanding of the totality of what the Christian faith stands for. Anyway, that's number one. Number two, now this one here is also problematic. Anthony Blinken, U.S. Secretary of State, says bringing the Israel-Hamas war to an end as quickly as possible is a top priority for the Biden administration in the year ahead. They've listed a number of priorities. Number 4 on the list, set by Blinken for the coming year, is an end to the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The quick end, as quickly as possible. Why? Because it's election year, not because they care about Israel, not because they care about the citizens of Gaza, because there's an election. They don't want the story in the headlines every single day, as we documented here. That's why they're pressuring Israel to end. But as we've said, if Israel's going to finish the job they started, it's going to take months and months and months. The tunnels are some 500 kilometers or 300 miles underground. They are very, very sophisticated. They found this giant tunnel that was right near the crossing where the people would come into Israel underneath, where you can drive an entire car through the tunnel, Jeeps and whatever, and bring ordnance. And that's how they've done it, to fight the war against Israel. So these things have to be destroyed. It's going to take time. It is taking time. The lives that have been lost have to have some type of meaning, and the meaning has to be the end of Hamas. So we'll see what happens. But again, the U.S. and the West is not really friendly towards this. And believe me, in 2024, they're going to get less friendly. Now, here again, this third story shows the idiocy of the Biden administration. It says they mull the relisting of Houthis as a terror organization, and now they're weighing offensive strikes. The Houthis, of course, a couple thousand miles from Israel down in Yemen, are sending rockets not only to Israel, but also to the shipping lanes there, which 10 to 20% of the world's goods goes through there. And they're basically disturbing that. There's a number of shipping organizations that are taking a different route that takes them longer. It's more expensive, but they don't want to risk being hit by rockets from these Houthis. And Biden, basically from day one in office, he delisted the Houthis as a terrorist organization, which they've always been. And now I was thinking, maybe we ought to relist them because they're threatening the United States. They're shooting rockets at Israel, which Israel has been told not to respond to. And the other countries of the world, some 45 countries have joined in and said, this cannot last. This cannot continue to be. We have to do something. But interestingly, a couple of the countries in the Middle East, the Saudis and the Egyptians, have not signed on with any type of military response against the Houthis. And that's a whole other subject in and of itself. But anyway, we're talking about this, but they did this idiocy in the first place by delisting them, and now they said we've actually conducting a review and thinking about the possibility of military strikes for the first time. They're attacking ships. They're attacking international shipping. They're 10 to 20% of the world's goods goes through there every single day. It's disrupting world commerce. It's getting more expensive for the world, as many other things about this war taking place. And so finally, well, maybe we'll get to, doing some offensive attacks against them and stopping them from, attacking these ships. So anyway, this shows how incompetent and inept Biden administration has been, is, and of course will continue to be. Now, our fourth update is really our main story, and one that we've talked about here. We will talk about it a lot more in detail. In fact, one of my New Year's resolutions is to do something on this subject and attach it as an appendix to one of our books that's already there. And that's explaining who the Palestinians are and why there's such a problem between them and Israel, a little bit of their history. And so we plan to get to that in 2024, God willing. But here is the update story. It's from one of the Israeli periodicals called Hayom. It's online. Hayom means the day in Hebrew. And it's a very good periodical to read. A lot of interesting editorials in that. And there's a story here that kind of says it all. It says what the Biden administration doesn't get about the Palestinian hatred towards Jews. And this is the issue in a nutshell. Changes in leadership in the Palestinian Authority or a renewed Palestinian Authority are irrelevant. What do we care if it's Mahmoud Abbas or Salam Fayyad? If in the streets of Nablus, Jenin, and Tulkarm, the crowds want to hand over their weapons to Hamas, who cares who's leading when the crowds are, handing over their weapons to Hamas? Why should we care if there's an old or renewed Palestinian Authority? Remember, we had that, the other day? We need a renewed Palestinian Authority. Why should we care if every slaughter or killing of Israelis and shooting in our streets, they dance and celebrate on the roofs and hand out sweets? That's precisely what happens. It's the people there that are supporting Hamas. 71%, according to the latest poll of the Palestinian people, support the murders that took place on October 7th. And so this is what the West doesn't get, the Americans don't get. And the author says, someone needs to brief the Biden administration that beyond the strong support for the war goals, there's currently a national consensus in Israel. And the consensus is that there's a Palestinian state next to Israel cannot happen. You can't have it next door. What we have right now in Gaza was the idea of a Palestinian state. 2005, we talked about that. It was going to be the friendship. Now we've given you this great piece of land. 1/3 of the exports from Israel were included in that territory. They had all these wonderful things. All they had to do is turn on the water, and it could have been the Singapore of the Middle East. That's what they were talking about. 2005. And what happened the moment they took over? They destroyed everything Israel had built. They voted in Hamas the next year, and the rest, as they say, is history. You've got these terror tunnels. You've got murders. You've got these rockets that have continued to come over against Israel. And so what the article says, the broad opposition among Israelis to a Palestinian state, which would be good for Americans to know, stems not only from the fact that it does take chunks of biblical land, the historic homeland from the Jews, to which many here are bound with every fiber of their being. In fact, the settlement enterprise in which 500,000 Jews now live is a clear expression of this. But the broad opposition to a Palestinian state is not, despite what the Americans wrongly assume, a function of any Palestinian leadership leading the Palestinian Authority. The rejection is at a much more fundamental level. Well, what? Well, the opposition to a Palestinian state stems first and foremost from the deep understanding, shaped by decades of terror, attacks, and bloodshed, that the hostility, the hatred, and the commitment to perpetuate the struggle against the Jews and the state of Israel comes from the grassroots level, from the Palestinian public en masse. So the leadership is just a reflection of that. Bottom line is they are taught from day one in kindergarten that Jews are monkeys, they're apes, they've taken their land, so from the river to the sea, we've got to get it back. They're evil people, and that's what they're indoctrinated with from day one. And this is the population. This is what they do there. The elimination of the Jewish people. Only one of the reasons, some of the reasons, 72% of the Palestinians, the West Bank, according to the latest survey, support the October 7th massacre. And most of them, despite everything they know, still support Hamas. The doctrine that prevails in the Palestinian educational system from kindergarten to the universities is a world without Israel, a world without the Jewish state, a doctrine that sanctifies the martyrs, it glorifies terror, and first and foremost is a reflection of what the households in Palestine, Palestinians espouse every day. They absorb hatred, distortion, lies, and incitement with their mother's milk. This too comes from there. And that's why there's no answer to this. There really is. The answer is going to come with the second coming of Jesus Christ, the Prince of Peace. There will be a false peace. We've talked about this in our book, 25 Signs. We're near the end of pseudo peace, when the final Antichrist brings for a time what seems to be an answer to this situation. But that's not going to last very long, because as Paul tells the Thessalonians, when they say peace and safety, 1 Thessalonians 5, then sudden destruction will come upon them. And so we see everything setting up miraculously, just as the Bible said. And again, can you imagine? I want you to always think about this. 2,000 to 3,500 years ago, talking about the time of the end, telling who the participants will be, who's going to fight whom, where they're going to be lined up. And again, everything has fallen into place, just as the Bible has said. This shows it is what it claims to be, the word of the living God. And one of our 25 signs is the continual search for peace. There will be no peace until the one born some 2,000 years ago, whose birthday we will celebrate in a couple of days, came into the world. He's going to bring peace eventually when he returns the second time, when he comes the second time. Anyway, that's what's going on now. So much taking place. Hopefully, during this Christmas season, you're remembering the first coming of Christ, because that's what we're all about here. The cross, the babe born in Bethlehem, who lived the perfect life, died for the sins of the world, rose from the dead, ascended into heaven, and tells his disciples, and that's us, to spread the good news about God the Son, who has an answer to the three basic questions of life: who we are, why we're here, and what's going to happen to us when we die. All right, God willing, we'll be back tomorrow again before 7 a.m. Pacific with another edition of Breaking News. Until then, I'm Don Stewart saying thank you so much for watching. And as always, may our Lord richly, richly bless you.